Live. We are live. Happy Monday. Welcome to this little corner of Exile in the Panelverse. I just looked at the news, nothing. Twitter. Oh, yeah, there was something on Twitter I wanted to show. This tweet. And I had a video I wanted to show, but I'll be darned if I don't remember which one it was. So that's going to all have to come back. But let me get to this tweet. It's a graph that shows, I'm sure y'all have heard this before, but in the younger generation, women are moving left and men are moving right. And it seems like they might be the reason their values, beliefs, ideologies, etc. So I want to show you this graph. Hang on. Can y'all see it? The wide Outliers gap opening up between men and women. It's different countries. Like this is for some reason the blue is conservative because it's men, and the red is women because it's pink women. But anyway, this is liberal. You can see in the U.S. Look how wide this gap is, and how it's diverging. And what year was this? 2010s. That's when they say all of this political friction started. So, and it says because women, but specifically young women, moved way to the left in many countries in the 2010s, it seems plausible that social media is a big explanatory factor, and it seems plausible that the thing women find on social media that moves them to the left is the post of men who obviously hate women and who are conservative or at least anti-left. Then he goes on to give several reasons. Hang on, why can't I? There we go. Anyway, I'll get into that in a minute. I wanted to do the graph, and then we can maybe go back to some of his arguments for it. Hey, Chris.
Okay. Is it not working?
Your sound's not working? I heard you a little bit, but now you're quiet.
Hello? No.
Is it the same sound that you've been using?
Yeah, same thing. Hello?
Yeah, I hear voice, but I can't make out words.
How about now?
Yeah. Now you're in.
Yeah, it wasn't switching over properly. So
What's up?
nothing. Just
How you doing?
here for the stream.
Oh. Okay. Oh yeah. Let me get the banner. Invite everybody on. Open panel. I had a video that I saw this morning or last night, and I said, "Oh, this is going to be perfect for the stream." And I looked in my history. I looked on my Twitter. I don't know where I saw the video or what the video was.
You remember what it was at all?
No. Hey, Crystal. Bex. Nope, sure don't. But oh, you know what though? We should try to watch that murder show today. The one Murder on Earth or something.
Yeah, I downloaded it last night.
Oh, you do? Okay. Because
the
premise looked good. It was kind of like a 10 Little Indians thing.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
I hope it's not gory.
Sorry to see it. I'll be able to stream it from this better computer, so it won't like. I don't think we'll have any issues with the streaming on this thing. It's got a pretty powerful like video card and everything in it. So
cool. Well, yeah, I'm excited. So we'll be watching some new murder mystery series. Who's the guy that did it?
Guess it came out last year, but it's called A Murder at the End of the World. It sounds kind of similar to like what they did with True Detective season 4, but it's set in like Nordic or Iceland or something like that, and but
Oh,
it seems like it's American
okay.
produced.
I wonder if it's Scandinor modeled after that. I love
I think
that
it's like a
genre.
co-production between American and a Scandinavian like company, from what I could
Ooh.
tell. There's Scandinavian actors in it too, so it's a kind of a co-production, but it's still
So
made.
it's
It
like
was
some
still made
people
for
in this
Hulu. So
isolated little Arctic whatever, and
yeah,
then there's murders.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm down for that. Up for that.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. I mean, and like we were talking about last night, I am a huge fan of Brooke Marlin. I think she's like the projects that her and her. I thought they were like husband and wife. I guess they're not, but I was looking at last night. I guess they're not. But the her collaborator, whatever his name, he has a weird name. He's Indian. He has like one of those like weird nicknames that has like a ton of consonants in it that I don't know how to pronounce. So I'm not going to try and butcher it. But yeah, I mean, it's like Zat. He's like his first name is like Zat. It's ZAT. So like I don't know how to pronounce the last name. It's a Bat Margiling or something like that. But anything that they've done together like has been very interesting. They did the sound of my voice, and I got a lot of comments already now. I didn't even notice. Um, yeah. The sound of my voice is a really kind of a cool like little like kind of mystery thriller thing about these this couple that kind of like they kind of infiltrate this like weird like cult thing, and but they also get like they also kind of get like seduced by it, and they're there to try to like expose it for being a cult, and but then like by the end of it, like even they still like I don't know, I'm not I guess I shouldn't spoil things, but yeah. It's
Okay.
like it's a really interesting little thing because like they're specifically there to try to expose this cult for what it is, but they kind of get seduced by it at the same time. It's really a pretty good movie. Um, it brings up a lot. It has a lot of interesting like questions in it, stuff like that. But you need to quit watching Death Becomes Her. That is that's a movie I've not seen in
The
a
Meryl
really.
Streep one.
I've not heard that. Yeah, I guess so. I have to assume
Yeah,
with
I
with
remember that
Meryl
one.
Streep and Goldie Hawn, right?
Yeah,
And
from
Bruce Willis and a
like
ruthless
the late
mustache. Yeah.
'80s.
hmm it was a special effects like miracle at the time. It was Robert Zemeckis, like that. I mean, like Back to the Future and stuff like that. And he did things with special effects at that point that had never been done before. It was a pioneer in the terms of like digital like compositing and making like doing like this like these kind of effects that had never been seen on film before. And they actually hold up pretty well from what I remember when I saw it like I don't know like 5-6 years ago. It's been a few years since I watched it last, but when I last watched it, I remember thinking like, the only thing about it is that it feels like the movie ends right when it just gets going. That's the only thing I don't like about the movie is like it feels like the whole movie is like building and building and building and building it, and it builds up, and then like nothing. It never feels like it doesn't feel like it has a third act. It feels like it has a first act and a second act, and it never feels like it fully gets the third act to me. But it's still a good movie. I like it. I think it's an underrated '80s movie classic kind of thing. A lot of
It
those cult films have that problem though, where they don't really have a good. They didn't have the money or the budget or whatever to like do a real proper third act for it. But yeah,
it's always seemed like a little like
yeah,
entertainment throwaway movie to me. It never seemed like a
yeah.
serious piece of art.
It's not. It was only serious art in the terms of the special effects department and the
Mm.
work they put into it and the pioneering they did to pull off some of the things in it. Were at the time like I watched a documentary about like the behind the scenes. I used to have like a
Someone
DVD
made a
thing
whole
for a DVD
documentary
for it.
about that one movie.
For the DVD, it was like a behind the scenes documentary
Oh, okay, yeah.
talking about the special effects and stuff. And when what they accomplished with the special effects on it was really at the time was revolutionary. Like no one had ever done effects like the way they did them at the time. And nowadays those effects are somewhat outdated. But they still look pretty good today. It's still quite convincing looking, despite the fact that like the technology they use is now very outdated. But um, yeah, it's kind of a cool like it's a cool timepiece in American in American cinema for when it comes to special effects. That's about it. It's kind of similar to how like some people view like certain aspects of a lot of different science fiction movies and Star Wars and stuff like that. You know, like their use of like the way that the innovation, like the Star Wars prequels may not be are notoriously not. A lot of people don't like them very much. They think they're very bad movies. But like I mean, Lucas literally invented whole new technologies to make those movies. Like he worked with Sony to make the first 24 frames per second digital camera. Before that, there were no digital cameras that could shoot in the same um, FPS as a film. So they actually all shot faster, and it was the reason why like digital video from that time period, when a movie was shot on video, you could tell immediately because it had a 30 frames per second frame rate. And whenever you could try to like remove like 6 frames per second out of that, but then it would make it look choppy. So they would usually just leave it, and it's 30 in the way it was filmed. Um, so I mean, Lucas, like he actually he pioneered entire new forms of filmmaking to make those movies, and the Wachowskis did something similar with what Matrix Reloaded. They invented entirely new, um, with Matrix Reloaded, they invented entirely new technologies to make those to do those shots, like the bullet time thing. Like they
For
invented that
Matrix.
specifically for those shots. And so there's interest, even despite the fact that those movies are. I actually like the Star Wars prequels to a certain degree. I don't think they're great, but I think there's some really interesting things in them. Um, but like the Matrix films happen to be decent movies in addition to that, but they're significant from a film history perspective because of the way they push technology forward.
What are
Technology
some other
nowadays
films
is
that have
considered
done
like
that?
pedestrian. I would say Blade Runner has some had some things in it that had never been done before, especially with compositing and the way they did the shots of the city and stuff like that. The way they did that, they made it look like it didn't look like a computer generated because it wasn't. It was done mostly with models and miniatures, but it was pretty groundbreaking at the time. Like the way they created those city shots to make Neo Tokyo look as realistic and gritty as it did. There's but I mean those kind of films are kind of Metropolis from like the silent film era and like
Oh
Seven Dwarfs of
yeah,
Caligari, like German
I like
expressionist
that one.
stuff was was wildly groundbreaking. As was most of the big steps forward in film technology took place in the early days of film, as opposed to like but then there was like a long period where like there wasn't really a lot of like forward momentum in terms of like technology, and then like around the 90s is whenever like suddenly all these filmmakers started like inventing new things just to do their movies with, and it's usually science fiction movies. And yeah, it's really it's an interesting, it's just like an interesting like pet interest of mine just because I'm into filmmaking and stuff. So Premonition is another watch movie to it. I don't think I've ever seen that movie. Carnival of
It
Souls, yeah,
sounds
I Carnival of
familiar.
Souls.
When
I'm
she
all for you
mentioned
there.
it,
That movie.
let's see.
Premonition, I can't. I remember seeing. I think I
Why
do
does it
remember seeing
sound
a
familiar?
trailer for it or something like that. I don't think I've seen it.
Even the poster for it looks familiar, but I don't know why. And I don't. Sandra Bullock is not my favorite actor. In fact, I go out of my way to not watch her
Yeah,
sometimes. So I don't know why I would have watched this movie, but it looks very familiar. Maybe I had a premonition of it.
it sounds very familiar, but I don't think I've seen it. I think I've seen the trailer for it. Is what I would have to assume. I have to assume I saw the trailer and didn't think much about it. So I don't know. I'm not gonna go with the trailer right now, but I'll definitely take a look and see if I can find online for something like that. If it's something you really heartily recommend. Carnival of Souls is a great old movie. I used to have a Criterion Collection DVD of that, and like that was and it literally like it was like the M Night Shyamalan movie of its day. It was like a movie that like the whole thing like is built around like a one big twist kind of thing, and like the twist is like what is what changes your whole perspective on the movie up to that point kind of thing. It's pretty good actually
What
for what it
movie is
is.
it?
It's pretty good.
What movie?
Carnival of Souls. Carnival of Souls.
I thought that was. Oh, I'm thinking of
Carnival of Souls.
Carnival, that HBO series. Let me see. Carnival of
Oh yeah,
Souls.
that's a decent show, but
You talking about the
Carnival of Souls
1962
was
movie?
it's yeah. Yeah, it's a
Oh,
black and
okay.
white 1962 movie, but it has one of the first instances of like a big twist in a movie where the whole movie revolves around the ending twist of it. Like it's one of the first instances of that kind of like thing, especially in a supernatural way. I mean, Hitchcock definitely did movies that had big twists in them, but like they were usually kind of sprinkled throughout the film instead of like the whole movie leading up to like one big like revelation type thing. So it was
Okay.
significant in that way. It's significant in terms of like the evolution of storytelling. Um, Not that I think that's particularly like a great way to tell stories. I kind of prefer films that, in more in the Hitchcock sense, that kind of like keep introducing new twists to the story as it goes along, as opposed to
Well, I
building up
mean, I
to
guess
one
it
big
depends
revelation.
on
But still,
what kind of story they want to tell, because I've
it
seen
depends on the
plenty of
story. Yeah, it
movies
depends on the
with the
story you're trying to
twist
tell.
ending that work, that make the movie. Like movies like Inception and stuff.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, Auntie Dearest, I would say that Carnival of Souls has been remade actually a few times now.
Oh, it
The
had like
basic
in
twist of
other
Carnival of Souls has
under
been
other
done.
names,
I mean,
or
just
as
other
Carnival
movies
of
have
Souls.
taken the basic gist of Carnival of Souls and have done it already. I'm not going to name what movies they are because that just gives away what Carnival of Souls is about. But yeah, but there's other
Oh,
movies that directly stole the premise and the ultimate denouement of Carnival of Souls. Like they took it directly and just did it again.
denouement.
So very famous movies. So anyway. Yeah. So you were what were you looking at there? That when I got on, like they were talking. You're talking about like the Twitter thing that was about like
Oh,
the how.
well, how women and men are like I've said this for a while, that it looks like the parties are polarizing along gender lines, and one of them is starting to represent male values, male norms, male ways of doing things, and the other one seems to be like drawing the people that are more psychologically female. And so, and this graph seems to support that, but the guy he tries to analyze it objectively and gives a list of reasons, possible reasons for that disparity. I was going to go through some of them. Let me just look here.
I mean, don't be wrong. I saw that much of it, and
His
like
opening theory
there's
was
definitely
that, so because of social media, women are seeing things on social media that are making them averse to men. They're seeing the way men act, talk to each other. Like they're getting a little window into the male psyche that they might not have had before social media, and it's pushing them away. They associate with the right, so it's pushing them left to counter that. But then another theory is that men are seeing, and this is what in my case, men are seeing shit from women that's making them move away from the left toward the right, because that's more aligned with their masculine norms, and that's the situation I'm in. But he gives other reasons behind just that. So let me see. He says, as far as the post of women being mean to men, etc., it's not true of most conservative men, but it is true of some of them. And like many antisocial groups, they tend to be loud on the internet. So women are seeing like a exaggerated, selected version of men on the right and associating that with the right, which is one reason we need positive male role models on the right to appeal not just to men, but to so women can see that we're a responsible party for their concerns too. But probably on the right before. These are people that were on the right to begin with, but yeah, exactly what I said. They couldn't necessarily make their views known before social media. So this is the first time women are kind of getting a look into these men as they express themselves. Since feminism is left wing, it's not surprising that people who hate women would tend to be right wing, since hating women is one, but obviously not the only reason to dislike feminism. There's research suggesting that conservatives as a whole have a pro-female bias, but a lesser one than liberals. So, and but women don't get that vibe again from social media, and it isn't clear how that can be changed. Conservatives that don't hate women could spend more time saying that, but they already do talk about that. It has little effect. They can't stop other people from opposing the left and saying anti-women things. We could also try to tell women that their experiences online are misleading and that most conservatives are not anti-woman, but that's expecting a good deal of rationality from people, and so probably won't work either. We could try telling conservatives who hate women that they should shut up because they're making women left-wing. We could try to decrease the number of men who hate women. I wonder if that number has decreased. Anyway, I'm pretty sure we don't know how to decrease the number of men who hate women. And so basically the point of the tweet is we're stuck. Like this, it looks like this trend's going to go on for a while because all the possible arrangements have reasons that they're not going to work. And for me, it's I grew up with women. I grew up in a matriarchy. The women ran everything. And I never really had a problem with women until moving up here and working with the women up here, some of the online stuff and groups and stuff. And for me, it's just it's I hate the word behavioral. It's a fundamental incompatibility in values like social values, conversational values, styles, etc. And it comes down to it seems like certain women that grew up very sheltered, middle class, upper middle class, have a lot of anxiety around unfamiliar stimuli like men, or at least men like me that are not soy and sanitized and safe. And they're very sensitive and reactive to the slightest little thing that indicates threat or danger in a way that like women from the South would not necessarily be and other men would not necessarily be. So it puts me, it's just a bad mix. It's like oil and water. And so I'm moving away
Hmm.
because of their reaction to me, but I think their reaction to me is completely irrational in the first place. So I don't know what the solution
Yeah.
is either.
No, I mean that's yeah. I guess I'm somewhat thankful that I have the only real the only real exposure I've had to those to that kind of female stereotype um to any great degree is actually one of my middle sisters who has become quite liberal and woke in that sense, but at the same time she's not really even that far where she's like in the fearing all men camp, but I've seen some of those tendencies with her. And most of the women around the Texas and stuff like I grew up with, they never really had those reactions, but it is I definitely see it online and stuff. I definitely
You
see
know those
that
videos of the women
trend
in the
online.
gym that post the pictures of the men that are creepy and staring at them and making them
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
uncomfortable, and all they're doing is working
yeah,
out.
yeah.
That
That
kind of
shit.
stuff. Those kind of that population. Imagine a whole city region full of those women, and everything is normed and
Yeah,
catered to their
and now
sensitivity.
uh, a lot of those exercise ones though, I think a lot of that shit is I don't even think those women are being genuine. I think they're doing it for
Well, for the
they're doing
ones
it
that are,
specifically
it's an
because
example of what I'm talking about. They're not all faking it. But so the ones that are, because there are women like that, I'm trying to describe and talk about them right now. The
no,
genuine
I'm
videos
not
of
saying they
that
don't
are an
exist. I'm saying
example
that
of it.
the exercise ones specifically. Yeah, I think the gym videos are an example of it, but I think that's like a learned behavior kind of thing as opposed to an actual fear. I don't
Yeah,
think they're actually afraid
I think
of
it's
men at
learned
all.
when I think it's learned from the sheltering. It's learned from not being sensitized to like two-thirds of the United States and the population and the people and types of people that make up the United States. So they grew up in this little bubble. They're only introduced to certain types of people. Um, and they're not prepared to integrate and be around this wide range of people that they didn't get socialized to. So in that sense, I think it is learned, but not intentionally. Like somebody tells them, "Don't talk to men; they're scary,
No, no,
dangerous."
not
Although
like
they
that.
might, I
They
wouldn't be
learned it from social
surprised if
media, and
some of them did.
they see that on social media whenever like the first whenever whoever was patient zero in that situation did that and like they got like lots of likes and mentions stuff like that. They saw that and they copied the behavior so that
Yeah,
they could
there's
get the same
power
kind
in
of reaction.
victimhood. I
Um,
don't respect it, but there's
yeah,
power in victimhood. I think it's a well, I won't.
yeah,
I will say. Um, Dahlia has a good question here. How
Yeah,
common do you think
and
it
I've
is to
seen
hate
men do it
women?
too. Now I've seen
And
men
what's
now also
hate? Like
copy
not
it again.
falling on your knees and worshiping the ground a woman walks on is hate to some women. Like, so what is hate really? Just that you don't like being around bitchy women with nasty personalities? That's not hate.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, it's not. I mean, now there are like the Andrew Tate types that do say like defamatory things towards the entire female gender that are ridiculous
Yeah, like the
and
Andrew Tate
overstated
types,
and
but I
in
don't
many
think
ways.
that's the norm.
No, it's not the norm. It just happens to be the most loud
Yeah,
minority
that's
in
what
the right
that
thinking
tweeter was
spaces.
saying. They're seeing the
Yeah,
most loud examples, and they're
it's
like shifting left as a reaction.
yeah. And part of it's just the culture in like those in those more in the area you live in California, the and stuff like that. But even in California, I think that I noticed in the Latino communities around here anyway. Maybe they're different in California, but I can't imagine they're much different if there is much new immigrants as they are around here, and like um they're not like ultra feminist or anything like that. So it's probably not even. It's mostly the waspy white women type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Um, so
that's
I
the
mean, like,
impression
so
I get too.
the Pacific Northwest is a particular hotbed
Very
for that sort of
waspy.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. I don't. Because like I don't see that as much in Latino communities or Latino families and stuff like that, or Black families either. Um, I don't see. I know you see that specifically. It's regional in that sense, but they just happen to be they happen to be the kind of region that happens to be really into social media. They're the hyper online types that
That's
really
another.
make
Yeah,
like
that's
the
another
big
good point.
and people that are just terminally online that don't ever see anything outside of their social media feeds. Yeah, I mean I see it. I see like
Well,
how it's
it's
happened and
ignorance, is
it's
what it is. It's just it's androphobia, androphobia, misandry, but all stemming from ignorance. Just like the white people used to be ignorant of black people, they had all these weird ideas of what black people were, and and then they gradually got to know and understand
yeah.
black people and saw that they were just normal like everybody else. It seems like
Yeah.
there's this we're savages that they need to be scared of when they're around us. We're dangerous.
Right, yeah. Or the same thing with gay people or trans people
Yeah.
or anything like that. It's the same basic thing. There's the fear of the unknown thing that takes over people's in group out group bias type thing, and like they get very standoffish with people that don't fit into what they have been seen as the norm. And the more exposure they get to it, the better it gets. But then different bubbles occur in like Pacific Northwest and stuff like that, where they're they end up becoming more isolated because even though they simultaneously preach for all this equality and all this stuff like that, they're also actually still very afraid of not just men, but of other minorities and stuff like that. And they actually are around them, but they know that they can't express that. So it comes out in these
Have
really
you ever
weird,
been
like
here?
um, passive aggressive ways. Hmm.
Have you ever been here?
I've met people from there.
You,
I've
Chris, you
not gotten that.
described it
I
so
went and got to it.
perfectly. Like you described it exactly how it is. It's all these little micro
Yeah.
subcultures, and they keep fragmenting. It's like the gay, black, queer, um, furry, whatever group, and then some of them will decide they're autistic, so they'll form like a gay, black, queer, furry, autistic group that will split off from that other group and become a separate group. And they just keep atomizing into these little tiny subcultures with all
Well,
of these Byzantine like
what's funny,
r- nonverbal rules and unspoken like protocols of entry
and
and
what's
stuff.
funny about it is like the reason I understand it is because growing up in the South, and because I grew up as a child of a minister, I saw it in churches. Churches do the same thing in the South.
Oh
That's the reason why there are so many churches in the South. Like they like a church forms, right? Like like there's a formation of a church, and they have one little ideological like like quibble with like the other half of the church, and so that church splits off, and so now you have a First Baptist and you have a Second Baptist, and then like the Second Baptist split off into a Third Baptist, and it goes on and on
Oh
and on
yeah.
until you get like you get tiny little towns,
That always
tiny little
confused
towns
me
that
as a kid.
have
I'm like, how many First Baptists are there?
right.
Which one was first? Every city had a First Baptist. There's a lot of first
Right,
around here.
and some of them literally have a Second Baptist and a Third Baptist and stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
and it's like
Yep.
this, and the differences between them are usually something very minor. It's a very minor
The
like
flavor Kool-Aid
theological
they
or
serve.
ideological issue. Yeah,
I
which
think
is a
Jesus
it's a
liked
very
grape
tiny
Kool-Aid.
thing.
I think he liked green.
Yeah, like they just like it's literally sometimes it'd be as little as like as a difference in like in just an interpretation of a single piece of scripture. It could be that one group thinks that when it says Jesus wept, it means he cried. The other one
But we
means that
see the
Jesus was
same thing
kind of
here
upset
with
about
all
it.
the little
You know?
streaming groups, and then
Yeah,
they fight over one little
yeah.
thing, and they clump up and they start getting their alliances.
It's a pretty normal human thing, I guess, that happens. Tribal
It
is the way
fascinates
that
me.
tribal lines defined.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they split off for basically nothing. I say it happened whenever my dad was a youth pastor at one of the churches he was at whenever where I was growing up in a tiny little town, and like there was like this split where like half the church members left and went and formed like a different church because they were they had like some like tiny little like ideological difference with the other people in the church, and like they just and everyone chose a side, and then they decided they made an official like an official declaration to like they were leaving and they were forming their own church, and that happened like in like it was a tiny little town. It was a town that like literally didn't even have 1,000 people in it, but we had like 50 churches. you know
Yeah.
think of like a church usually is like usually it has like around it's even in small towns they usually have around 100 something 150 members or so of
You
that
think they all
church,
know each
and you
other, like
have
when
like
they're out and about shopping? Like, oh,
oh
she's
yeah,
from
they
that
definitely do.
church and
they
he's
they
from
know
that
each other.
church.
Yeah, no,
God,
they do. I encountered it too as I got older. Whenever I was a very active church member.
she's third Baptist.
It's whenever
We don't talk about
when I left church in general, I was part of a non-denominational a church that wasn't associated with Baptist. I was part of a non-denominational church, and there was in that case it was a split. Like there literally was like the cops got called. There was like a riot at a Sunday morning. Like
that.
people were throwing chairs at each other. Okay, I
Oh
mean
my God, I would be out there with a bucket
because
of
of
fried
like
chicken. I love a good
yeah.
church
Well, I
fight.
wasn't there that day, but I had left the church before that even happened because the pastor
They're
declared
all
himself as
amped
the
up on
voice
the
of God, and I
spirit,
was
and
like,
they're. I love a good church brawl.
yeah, it was in like the papers and everything. Like it was like this big deal, where half the people of the church like divided against the other half, and like they literally like
Oh
split
yeah.
into like two groups. Apparently, there was a couple of photos from it that people took at the time. They were very low resolution photos, like people took on like the ancient cell phone type things, and but like there wasn't much like that I could see from it, but like there was they filmed the services, and like I did someone at one point sent me like a video clip of like the actual like incident, and it was insane. It looked like a bar fight, um, but taking place in this church. And the funny thing is that the church that I was part of, the gathering, the building they got that they ultimately converted into the church was kind of infamously had been a strip club that had opened on the edge of town, and got shut down by by all these church like group activists. They shut down the strip club, and like then this church that I was part of, the gathering, they bought
All
that
in a.
building.
Oh my God,
They
in
turned
Washington
they
State.
took out the stripper poles.
I just Google. I just did a YouTube search for church fights, and there's a whole list that came up. One of them's a Catholic
Yeah,
church here
there's
in Washington State. I'm trying to find. Well, these people don't. I want to see what a Washington State version of a church fight looks like. These people don't fight at all. Although we did have Evergreen. There's a whole. Oh my
yeah.
God. There's a whole genre of. Wow. Okay, I know what I'm
Yeah,
doing this afternoon. in addition to watching that murder movie.
Yeah. It is. I have looked into the phenomenon myself because growing up, I mean, I saw it growing up some, but like the one that happened with I remember being in that service like whenever I was a child, and I didn't really understand what was happening, but I do remember a lot of yelling and a lot of like, a lot of the deacons of the church and everything yelling and stuff like that. But they never got, there was no physical altercation in that case. But the one that happened in the church that I had been a part of as a teenager, apparently, like, and this is after, like I said, this is after I walked out and like left the church permanently. I walked out very publicly, because, and I had at one point been a leader in the church, and so like, like my walkout was very noticed by a lot of people. um um and and then it was like, I don't know, 2 months later, whenever like this riot type thing happened, like cops were called, people were arrested, for, I mean, like, for like, there was fist fights, people were throwing chairs, it was ridiculous. um and I mean, it was just insane. It was just like, and it was because dude, it wasn't even a theological thing. It was because of like, accusations that were made against one of the, about the church, the youth pastor, who wasn't even at the church anymore, but he left under like dubious, like, circumstances or something like that. Which, to be honest, like, from my understanding of it, I don't think most of it was true. I think most of it had been like, it seemed like it was pretty fabricated, but at the same time, but somebody at like, the pastor mentioned it, I guess, like whenever he was talking about these accusations or something like that. And like, then the parents of his parents, the youth pastor's parents, were, like, two of the highest ranking members in the church, and they basically got up and they were like, you're slandering our son, and like, and then half the congregation was like, no, blah blah blah, and then the other one was like, and so they just like, yeah, it was insane. And I was just like, I remember reading it in the paper, and I was like, holy crap, like, I used to be part of that place. um it's part of what, like, led me away from organized religion. I couldn't be a part of such a ridiculous, a ridiculous group of people anymore
Of
that would,
grown-ups acting like that.
yeah,
I
grown-ups
get
acting
it.
like
I
that.
understand. Yeah.
I mean, like, I left because the pastor, like, basically declared himself God, and I was like, that was a bridge too far for me. And then like, then that happened a couple months later, and I was like, the only time I went back to the church after I'd walked out was like, I went back one night, because it was like the farewell, in between those two incidents. There was like, when the youth pastor left, he left the church, and like, I didn't know that there was like accusations or anything like that at the time. I went back to say goodbye to him because he'd been very kind to me, as I grew up in that church and stuff like that. And he was always very, he was very supportive of me. I was very different, as you can, I'm sure, imagine. I was a very different kid. I wasn't like your typical teenager, and he was very supportive of me, and supportive of me being not your typical, like, teenager type thing. And I really appreciated that. He really gave me a lot of like, um a lot of psychological and emotional support in those times, even though he was part of the reason I left the church too. But that's kind of a different story. But still, yeah, it was just like, but I went back. The only time I went back to that church ever, I never went back again after this, was after I'd done that walkout thing. I went back once, just whenever they did like a big farewell party thing for him, because he was moving to Dallas. He was taking a position there, and it was very weird. Whenever I went, and I just went up to him, just to tell him, like, that he had had a positive influence in my life, and I was appreciative of him. And he looked at me so sadly. It was like this moment that I'll never forget, the look on that guy's face. Like, I didn't, I now, and then knowing like the what was actually going on later, it made a lot more sense. But he looked at me like with like this just look of like world weary, like, sadness, and he was like, "Don't change, man. You've got a good, you've done the right thing." And like, I was like, I didn't expect that at all. It was very emotional at the time. Like, I was really overwhelmed by that. I was like, I didn't even understand what was happening. But it was like, because it wasn't like, it wasn't just like he was sad because he was leaving the church. he was sad. There was something deeply sad there that in his voice and in his look in his eyes, and like and then I understood later on that some girl had accused him of like molesting her or something like that, and I don't think, and I actually knew that girl and found out later that she did actually make it up, yeah, but yeah, it was
Okay.
a whole thing. It was a whole thing. It was a big whole thing in that town. We were a very like weirdly kind of, it was a kind of a charismatic type church thing. Like our youth group, we used to go out every night. Like we have a Texarkana has like what you'd call a main drag, right? It's state line. Like
Mhm.
it's literally the line, the state line between Texas and Arkansas is the main drag. Like if you're driving on the left side of the street, you're on Texas, and you're driving on the right side of the street, you're on Arkansas, or whatever, whichever way you orient it. And and people would just like on Saturday nights, Saturday, Sunday nights, they would just go out there and they would just like, they would just like, cruise the strip, cruise the little strip of the state line. They'd go up and down, like, hollering at each other. Like it was like, the old, it's something that like, I don't think that happens a lot anymore. I don't think a lot of kids like cruise their main drag anymore, but that was like, there was still a thing then. And so like our church would go out, and walk down the sidewalks, and like they was I always somebody like they would carry, like they would carry this big wooden cross, and they would, the big sign that says Jesus loves you on it and stuff like that. And they were, kind of those obnoxious kind of Christians like that. But I mean, I still have fond memories of those times. They were good, positive people, and I learned a lot about, compassion. I also learned a lot about people, and a lot about like people, how duplicitous people can be, and it taught me. I learned a lot from my experiences in church in that sense. I don't feel,
No one
as though
cruises
like,
anymore.
yeah, it didn't in Texarkana. I mean, but well,
They
no,
don't.
yeah, 20 years goes about right. That is how long it's been. I was like, no,
Let's see. What are
that was,
we?
oh yeah, that was 20 years ago. Damn it. I'm that old. I forgot. I was like 18 then, so that's definitely been 20 years. So yeah. Yeah, it sounds like church politics sucks. Yeah, so church politics are the worst kind of politics. They really are. Church is something that
Are they
should be
worse than any
political
other
and
politics? Are they worse than streamer politics? Are they worse than
I
Congress?
don't
Are they
know. I
worse
don't know.
than?
I don't know if I can say. There would have been a time when I would have said, "Oh yes, definitely." Now that I've seen the streamer politics, and I've seen how politics themselves have just like evolved in our country in the last decade. I can no longer say that. Whenever 20 years ago, whenever I left that church and everything like that, then I definitely would have said, "Yo, church politics are the worst kind because they're so stupid, and they're so, and it's people getting like divide, people that should like, that ideally should be joining together to try to help the community and to try to promote like positivity, and to try to promote like this positive idea of
Yeah. What
humanity
do
or
you
whatever
think
it is they're doing."
happens? Because that happens here too. Like, what? Why do people like end up resorting to this pettiness over the positive stuff? Because it seemed like it would be easy to say, okay, I don't want to sabotage the positive with this petty stuff, so I'm just gonna let this small thing go so we can keep the positive thing going. But they don't. One
I
little
don't know.
tiny thing, and it's like poof, the positive stuff goes up in flames.
Yeah, it's just like in a lot of some cases it's like a straw that breaks the camel's back type of thing, where there's a bunch of issues that have been piling up that have been ignored, and then like that one tiny thing is the thing that sets off the,
So
it's
that's
like the
people
match.
not communicating and
Yeah.
expressing their needs on their end,
Yeah, and then,
letting things build
sometimes it's
up.
that, but sometimes it's just purity testing bullshit. The same thing happens on the left. It's why I think that the left is so fascinating to me these days. Is because the left has become the new religious right, or the new religious movement. Like the
Mhm.
religious people now are the leftists,
They're worse
not the
than the
conservatives.
religious right that I remember. The religious right never told me
Probably.
how to talk or like who I can hang out with or tried to find all these little reasons I was a bad person. They mainly focused on one or two main things that they were concerned about: sexuality, drug use, rock music, etc. The left is
Yeah.
like every single little thing you say or do, or any movement or anything could potentially be something evil.
No, but churches got that like it too, man. I mean, like it was like, I mean,
I don't.
seriously,
I
there
haven't
would be.
experienced a church that feels as oppressive as the left. I don't have a wide range of experience. I have friends from different religions, but I
I have
myself
less experience with like
a couple
IRL.
of Protestant ones and Catholic,
I
but
have less
none of
experience with
them were as
IRL
obsessed as the
leftists.
left with moral righteousness and purity.
Right. Yeah, I do I see what you're saying. I have less IRL experience with the left to make that judgment, like see how much worse or better either side would be. But I understand your viewpoint there entirely, and I don't think you're wrong. I but like in my experience though, like in like the church even I was in, like they got like super puritanical about like little stupid things like seriously they would have depending on the week, like it depended on like what they like whatever like somebody got really like hyped up on it, that some morality issue, it would be something tiny like owning secular music CDs type thing, and they would come and like people would come and like they would repent for like listening to like non-Christian music, and there was like this ridiculous like cross they had in like the audit in the sanctuary auditorium place, where you could come and you could nail the stuff to the cross.
The
People would come to like
CDs to the
they would nail
cross.
their CDs. They would nail their CDs to the cross, or they nail or if it was a book or whatever it was. You could go and like and you could like like repent from it and like and nail your stuff to cross. I mean, I even when I was part of the church, and even when I was supportive of it, even I thought at the time I thought that I was always kind of against that. And I always thought it was dumb. I was never really 100%. And then the weird thing is that I was never really 100% with a lot of the stuff they did like that. And yet at the same time, like behind the scenes, like all of those same people that made those big deals about that sort of stuff, they were still doing that stuff. They were complete
Did
hypocrites,
people
which I
use
found out
it?
later on.
Did a lot of people nail stuff? And did the
There
community
was
get
there
to
was
see
quite a
who
few
was
people.
nailing what?
Yeah, it was done publicly. I mean, it wasn't like you didn't have to. I guess you could have done it like at any time, like before or after the service, when people weren't around. But usually people would do it as like this big like it was a big well, as these days we call it virtue signal. It was like a big virtue signal thing that you did.
Yeah, that's
You
what I
got
was
up,
thinking.
you know, yeah,
I'm gonna
they did
nail
it as a big
this
virtue signal. It
Michael
was like they're
Jackson
showing like
CD. Let me
how
nail my
much more
Wham
holy they
CD.
are because yeah, exactly. It was like like I have a Soundgarden CD. I'm gonna go nail this to the cross and show that I'm holy enough to like
Give it up the
to like
devil. This is
reject the devil's music, right?
devil music.
Um, and like I always thought it. I mean, sometimes it wasn't even like some of the CDs that these people would like. Some of them were actually even Christian CDs. They were Christian music artists that were
That
like
weren't
big
Christian
in
enough.
Christian music. They weren't Christian enough though, and they would get nailed to the cross too, and I would just be like and there was a couple of times when it was like it was bands that even like I even liked back then. I always liked music from all over the spectrum. I always listened to stuff from both sides of I grew up in the Christian music. My dad worked at a Christian radio station at the time. And so like I actually had access to a lot of like the really weird alternative Christian stuff like that. Some of the stuff I've showed you, like that lust control thing and stuff like that. Some of the really weird stuff. And so I had a lot of experience in like this alternative Christian music scene that was very different from like what the mainstream was. And like that was a lot of the stuff that like a lot of these people would like these kids would come up and virtue signal with, and I would just be like it's such a reach, you're trying to reach so hard to show that you're somehow more pure than the other person, and that's where a lot of it starts. It's like it
Why?
starts with like
Oh, because
it
that's how
becomes
you get
competitive.
status. Like the more pure you come across, the
Yeah,
more status with the
it's
church you get.
it's competition. It's competition to see who it's
You get
competition to
the
see
better
who is
slice of cobbler.
the most holy. The who's the most holy here? Who's the most pure and who's the most,
And
that's
they
the same thing happens
actually
to the left,
believe that, like they believe, like the people that are at the top of the holy pyramid, they actually believe they're more holy.
I don't know how much they believe it, but they certainly are trying to
What
convince
is
themselves of
holy
it.
anyway? Like you follow all
I
the
don't know.
moral
It
strictures.
just me it me yeah, it's the same thing on the left. Is it's just pure, it's just the purity test thing. It's just like I use the word holy because that's the term they would use, but it just means that like that's how like
How come they're
how
so
good of a Christian
unpleasant? Like
how good of
holy
a Christian
people
you
on the
are.
right, like religious holy people, even like
Mm,
Talcott a little bit. They have this
yeah.
like calming light that comes out of them and you're like, oh yeah, they seem holy. What a pleasant feeling. The holier the people are on the left, the more uptight, obnoxious, shrill, strident they are. Like nothing, none of their purity communicates anything positive to me.
Well,
They seem
at the same
miserable.
time, look at the if you look at the example you just used, and I don't want to talk crap about anybody, but
Oh, I,
the person you mentioned, he definitely he goes into those moments where he becomes very shrill and very like Karen like and like and it's very he gets very uppity about things too. It is
who
like
did
a
I
lot of those
mention?
people would be, they would. What was
Oh,
that?
oh yeah, him. Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to. I'm just trying not to. I'm not trying to talk shit, but I'm just. But it's just it is a fact of the
But
matter.
no, no, but I'm talking. Maybe you don't have them in Texas, but you said that the more pure, and it's always some upper class white lady that's the most pure. Um, the
Yeah,
more
for real.
pure, the more virtually righteous or whatever on the left, the more that's their version of holy. And I'm saying the people that fit that they see as the most pure are also the most unpleasant to be around. They don't radiate anything positive at all, ever. Jack Talcott at least sometimes radiates something that if someone pointed to and said holy, I would say, okay, yeah, I kind of see it. The left, nothing. Not even a fragment, a
Yeah, they
millisecond of
never see. They
anything
even
that
see.
feels spiritual for being at the top of the purity pyramid. Whatever their
No, I agree.
purity is, it's not anything. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like goodness, or it doesn't communicate anything higher. It's like I can be the most
No, I
uptight
agree.
about everything.
Yeah, it is. There's a big difference in leftist circles as opposed because like the whereas Christians, like in the Christian sects like that, and there were people like that in the Christian in those communities that I
Hey,
grew up
Cole.
in. There were people that were always kind of on the edge that were never that it was never good enough. They were never, it was no matter what, and they were always the most obnoxious ones, the ones that were always pushing, like like it every time they
That
felt
would
like
have
they
been me.
solved like some little cause they had, they would move on another one. But there were several people that would like would radiate this calmness and peace kind of thing until something set them off, and then they would turn into like this other kind of like this
But I
monstrous
think
kind of
that's
like
normal. I think
you
that's
know
what people do. Like the most calm, gentle soul on earth is going to get pissed off if you poke them enough. That's just
yeah,
normal. That's not like a
even
hidden
Jesus,
demon
even
crouching in them, waiting
yeah.
to be revealed that
No,
they
and
were
I'm
masking
just
the whole
like
time.
even Jesus has said in the Bible too of like he went into the temple and and turned all the money changer tables over and everything. So, like I mean
This is a
even
good question from the freak. What is the difference? You come up and explain if you want, or in the comments between
yeah,
holy and righteous. When you say you're righteous, what do you mean? I guess is what I'm asking. High cult.
yeah, I agree, Defreak. Very few are holy or even called to be holy. I see what you're saying there entirely. It's just it was just the terminology that particular church used a lot, and that's the reason why I use the term. Holiness is a
Did
very
they feel
it's a vague
holy? Like
concept.
did they radiate warmth and light and stuff? The ones that
Sometimes they
radiate.
did. Sometimes they did. There was definitely like this very like Zen calmness about them at times. But and like I said, but then then but then you'd see like the other side of it. But it was never about anything that actually seemed important. It was always over something very small. Um,
Mhm.
occasionally there were actual issues. There actually were people that were excommunicated from the church because of like doing like bad things that were proven bad things that were admitted to. And to the church's credit, it didn't just excommunicate them and just and it actually tried to reintegrate them and try to like give them forgiveness and stuff like that, which is something you would expect from um, but kind of like within certain like boundaries so that they didn't have a chance to violate those um their abuse their power. Really, it was what it was. I mean, basically I'm talking about people that were in youth leadership that used that your youth leadership to get close to younger girls and stuff like that. It's usually what it was. Um and like that was actually one with the pastor of that church. Actually it was actually at one of these like sit downs where he was explaining like there was one particular leader that was had to be asked to leave because of like something he'd done. And where like that pastor said one of the most like profound things that I've always held on to is that he said that he said that he wants everyone to remember that a crooked staff can strike a straight blow. And so I always keep that in mind. Like, even sometimes, like somebody who is bent in a wrong way, it doesn't mean that it doesn't just because they did something bad doesn't necessarily invalidate everything they've said in the past. It just means that they are human. They have done something wrong and something that
You
maybe
know what? I
is not even
suspect
like
I'm calling bullshit on that because I suspect that sounds nice and everything, hanging on a needlepoint plaque on someone's house, but I don't think people apply that in practice. I don't.
sure that
I
might be
think
true.
there's
Well,
some
I'm just
people that
but
they're
all
going
I'm
to
saying is
judge more harshly, no matter how much the one little bad thing they did relative to everything else, or their words and there's others that
that's
are going
very
to get a
true.
pass and slide because they like them better.
That is true. That is true. But I mean, I'm just talking about just like the quote about a crooked staff striking a straight blow, just meaning that just because someone maybe it changed my view on like the way although like canceling that's the reason one of the things that keeps me from ever supporting like people getting canceled and stuff like that because just because somebody does something that is inappropriate or wrong or maybe they said something wrong, I don't think that invalidates the entire history of who they are.
But
If they
but
have
even
done or said good things in the
but
past, it
hang
doesn't
on,
invalidate that.
how do you determine what's wrong? You're assuming that the person has the power to declare that they said something wrong. So who gets to determine when somebody said something wrong other than a court? Perhaps if there's an actual
Right? No, I
charge
mean I
brought.
agree that it should be legally
So it's
decided.
not
I mean I don't think
they're
that
still being condemned for something bad that somebody
yes.
else is imposing on them and condemning them for. And that's being
Yeah, I
measured
agree.
against the rest of their history, but not
I
anything they
agree.
intrinsically necessarily did.
I agree with that entirely. That's actually what I'm saying is that it taught it was like a lesson I learned from that taught me that just because someone fucks something up, it doesn't mean that it doesn't invalidate their everything who they have always been.
It's
And like
definitely a
that's the reason
point.
why I'm a
It's
keep.
definitely a data point for me. It says something about their
Yeah,
neural wiring and their tendencies and how their
yeah,
path
and,
of
and
least
in certain
resistance is
cases, if it's if
currently
it's
set,
if it's
like their default.
particularly if it's particular, but like okay, let's imagine like someone is like is a super talk is constantly talking about like pedophilia or child
Can we
trafficking
pick a
and things
different
like that, like
topic?
these really horrible things. Okay, whatever. Whatever the case, you can put insert
All right,
any kind of like horrible thing you can think
cockfight,
of, right?
cockfighting.
Someone who yeah, cockfighting. Okay, is someone whose whole thing is against cockfighting, but you find out they're doing cockfighting behind the scenes. It doesn't invalidate the fact that cockfighting is wrong, just because they're hypocrites, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't like it. That doesn't mean that
Who
like
thinks
because
that?
there's like
What retarded
they
idiot
do
would
that all
think
the time
that?
they do it all the time in purity testing type situations. There's this mentality that if someone
Oh my
violates a
god!
norm, that everything they are needs to be like ignored and like you need to like
And all of it.
re-examine
So if
everything they
they're
ever
preaching
said.
against drugs and violence and sexual assault and all of that, and they violate a norm, all of a sudden people are gonna think, "Oh, drugs and sexual assault must be okay now. Let me go out and do all that." I don't think people are that stupid. That just because
They
a
aren't.
person they followed like fell off the path, that all of a sudden everything that person condemned is a green light to go engage in. That
They
sounds
aren't. I
so
agree, but I mean,
bizarre to me that somebody would do that, would think that way.
I've seen that in a lot of leftist canceling type things where like like they like it's like somebody just says something. I think Lindsay Ellis is a good example of that. She was and she was literally she's like one of the best examples of the left eating its own. Like she's a hardcore leftist, but she made good content and stuff like that, and I actually enjoyed a lot of her videos. But she's very left, she's very woke and everything, but she said that it's one of the most innocuous things ever on Twitter, and from that it sparked this whole firestorm of everyone like digging through everything she's ever said and going back and picking apart every comment she's ever made and saying and just showing how like she's actually wrong about all these things and like things that were like just like they were like invalidating like some of their own beliefs just so they could like show how
What
wrong
was
she
one of
really
her
was like
beliefs that they reversed?
I don't remember it all. I mean, this was years back whenever that happened, but I remember like I mean, it was a ridiculous controversy too. I mean, she literally just made like this innocuous comment about something about a Disney movie being like too close to Avatar, and people took it as like that being anti-Asian or something,
What's
and then
her
it
name?
turned
I
into this
can't
whole
even
firestorm
find
with like
her. What's her name? I
Lindsay
can't
Ellis.
even
Yeah,
find
well,
it. Lindsay
she
Ellis.
got
Okay.
got run off the internet. Yeah, Lindsay Ellis. Yeah, she used to make YouTube videos mostly about like theater and literature and stuff like that. She used to work for PBS some, and she was really funny and she was very her videos were very well written. And I enjoyed her content even though I didn't always agree with her. I still I enjoyed her content, but she got like super canceled because of like one of the most innocuous things ever, and just like there was just like this ravenous appetite to try to like
She
destroy her in any
compared
way
the film
possible.
Raya and the Last Dragon to Avatar, the Last Airbender on Twitter,
Hmm.
which perceived to be a racist generalization of media featuring Asian people. What? See,
Hmm.
these are people with too much fucking time on their hands and not enough cotton to pick.
Exactly. Yeah, but they're
Walking
very
away
similar to
from
church people in that sense.
illusion to the. So,
I mean, at least the way church people were 20 years. I haven't been in a church in 20 years. So, like, at the same time, like, churches may have gotten better. They might not be as, I can't imagine they've gotten that much better, but I mean, like, they might not be
why
as
would you not
self-destructive and
imagine
as,
they've gotten better when every other institution out there has? Like, why would you think churches have also not gotten better? People are going to go to all these other institutions that have gotten better and then go to their church and revert to a different person that things are not better for, but then they're better when they go to these other places. Why wouldn't they carry the new
um,
values over into church as well?
I mean, I'm assuming, I don't think the values in most churches have changed that much, but maybe they have. I mean, once again, and
Well, like,
Cynthia has,
do you think the
has
churches
mentioned
still
that,
preach
her church.
slavery or Jim Crow? Surely the churches have
Oh, no, no.
adapted to
I mean,
that somehow.
none of the churches preached that whenever I was growing up. I don't, not even in the small southern towns I grew up in. Like they were all very anti-racism,
I'm
anti.
challenging
They
this
were
idea that
always very.
churches are too like rigid and dogmatic to adapt to changing times and progress. Like churches can't make progress. They're deficient somehow in their
I
ability
mean,
to make progress.
when it comes to like things like gay people
But they have plenty
accepting.
of church. That's what I'm saying. Plenty of
Yeah,
churches.
well,
The
that's
Pew
what I
just
was
put out a
saying.
poll. 75% of religions support gay marriage now. 75% of
Well, that's what I was
Catholics,
saying though.
Protestants, the Mormons were like at 50%. Go look at the numbers from 20 years ago, and then try to tell me that churches don't progress.
No, I agree with that. That's what I was saying. I was saying that I think that like, like the perspectives and like the acceptance of gay people and stuff like that has definitely changed. I think that they've definitely progressed a lot in those areas. They where I feel like the progression hasn't happened that it needed to is more in like just like their tendencies to still be very tribalistic and to divide along like silly like ideological lines, which I mean, I
What
assume
what
still happens because I
what
still see
group
new
out
churches
there
popping up.
is
So
not? What group of humans out there is not doing that kind of stuff? Like, I watch Survivor and Big Brother all the
you're
time,
right.
and they put people in tribes, and
You're
those
right.
same exact divisions happen almost right away.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah. Especially you put people in the tribes too. If you give
So,
them
is
like
there
a
something
tribe to
about
belong to, and
churches
say you
in
belong to this tribe.
particular that you have a grievance against that they're doing that
No,
no other
I don't.
group
It's
of
not
humans is
churches in
doing?
particular. It's not churches in particular. It was more. I was more making just like the comments like that's really that's what informs a lot of my viewpoints and my understanding of leftist type stuff is comes from my experience in church.
Oh yeah,
That's
that I
what gives me
believe
my
that it's the same. It's a
that's
parallel.
all I was really. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I was really saying. I was just saying that I understand leftist dynamics and like the way they purity test to the where they're almost become an Ouroboros. They start eating their own tail, kind of thing, because of tribalistic lines. They eat their own, as they say. And I saw that same kind of thing in churches a lot, and that's the reason why I understand it so well. Even though I'm not absorbed into leftist circles like you have seen up in the Pacific Northwest, you've been in those groups and you've seen it firsthand a lot more than I have. I've only kind of seen those groups from kind of afar, and through the internet or through my one sister that is was kind of involved in that sort of thing. So, I mean, I've seen that kind of thing a little bit, but not nearly as much as you have. But I have an understanding of it because it's so similar to the way that church dynamics used to work, at least whenever I was younger. They may not work, and
Uh,
there is no. You're right. I don't have a reason to assume that they haven't grown or changed at all. They very well may have. I
I mean,
don't
they may
have a
not. The Pope just came out and said transgenderism is a crime against human dignity or something, and that the church shouldn't
right. Yeah.
support it. So, like, it is. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying this idea that churches by default are stuck in the past just because they're a church, because religion somehow retards people's ability to adapt
I don't think
to
it's religion.
progress.
I don't think it's religion. I don't think it's religion that actually does it at all. I don't think it has much to do with religion. It's more like religiosity. It's like the kind of like the mentality that being in a rigid religious state of mind kind of puts you in, which is the same thing you see on the left. They have a very
Yeah,
religious type of mindset.
yeah.
That's all it is. It's not the belief in God or the church beliefs itself that inspire it. It's the dogmatism
But it
rigidity in which they take it.
there's something about the version on the left, because the version on the right, they may believe whatever they believe, but none of them are really trying to change me much. Like a few decades ago, they would like try to save me or put like proselytize or push Jesus as a
Yeah,
solution, but they don't do that anymore. The left is the one that's
yeah.
constantly trying to, way worse than the right ever did. And
And
so
which is
they're the
which is largely
ones
because
that are trying to
younger
convert me
people.
and actively, constantly, and like try to get me
Yeah,
indoctrinated into their religion
because
or
20
their
years ago there were
religiosity.
younger people. There were younger people in churches that would go to churches like myself. There were younger people. Those same people that would be activists today have left the church and have gone and have moved
Shifted to
into
this
activism
instead.
instead. Yeah, they've
Yeah.
shifted. People have, as they say in churches, and this is a term I kind of hate, but like I understand it better now the older I get. They all have a God-shaped hole, right? They all have this need for some kind of God. It doesn't have to be a Christian God, it doesn't have to be a literal God, but they all have this need for like this God type of like thing that that the leftist type of like dogmatism like fulfills whenever they've left. They grew up. A lot of these kids grew up like in churches, like going to church with their parents or something like that, and they hit that phase where like they were like, fuck church and fuck it, I'm an atheist or whatever. And so whenever you need something, and whenever like the new atheism movement kind of fell apart, that kind of shifted into leftism, and the leftism became the new atheism type thing, and like
It was
and so like
atheism
it
plus, I think they call it. It's the social
yeah,
justice
atheism
version.
plus, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
atheism
split a
plus
lot of
kind of
those
fell apart
communities.
because of
You had a
Gelivarianism.
social justice version of it, even Satanism. Like the Satanic Temple is the social justice version of Satanism. There's social justice versions of autism, mental health, etc. So every existing group, like in around 2020 and beyond, started to split into a social justice version and then a traditional version, which became stigmatized and marginalized. And so I've seen it happen with many groups, and atheism is one of them.
Yeah.
It's like a
No,
secular, it's like a
it's
secular religiosity.
James Lindsay has actually I can't remember the podcast I think I watched, but he did a podcast. Maybe it might have been when he was on Sitch and Adam, actually talked a lot about this, about how the shift from religion to leftism, and how now that leftism is starting to fragment to the point where it's falling apart too, that he was predicting that the next thing is going to be that people are going to move into he thinks I don't know if I agree with it. I don't think I agree with him because I don't think there's going to be enough people to like support this. But he thinks that like the next phase is going to be belief in aliens and believe in like aliens are going to or be the new. I know it sounds silly, but I mean he makes some good points.
How
I'm not going to say that he's like a complete whack job on that, but I mean, but at the same time,
that's
I don't
some
disagree.
God-shaped
But I
hole.
mean,
If aliens and snake people could feel it,
but you can see some of it
I
happening
think it's
though.
going to be
You
like
can see some of it.
headed toward transhumanism, some man-machine
Well,
hybrid
that
God,
was part of it too.
AI God.
He actually yeah, he actually was putting those things together with aliens and AI and like the transhumanism thing
Well, it
was
like
like the
if you
next
take
step.
out the aliens, another race or consciousness somewhere else in the universe, and just leave humans in the picture, you still get this like sci-fi this technocratic
Yeah.
sci-fi
I
dystopia from
think
humans
that was
alone.
his I don't think he articulated it particularly well on the podcast at the time, and it made it sound like he was talking about literally like literally aliens guy, you know, kind of thing. But what he was really talking about, I think, was that the transhumanism, like that things are going to become like it's very similar to the UFOlogy kind of thing, in the way that people like take to it. So he was seeing that as like that's what he predicts as being the next step in like this progression away from traditional religiosity into like these new forms of religion. And
Yeah,
I
but
you
it's
know
happening
I
on the right too, or the center with like Jordan Peterson and the archetypes and the rediscovery of myth and that kind of stuff.
I guess so. I mean, I think Jordan Peterson, at least his older stuff, like was much less. He was much more about like trying to open people's minds
But I'm talking
to
about
seeing
not
things.
necessarily his intention, but people's response to him. He is opening that religious side of them in a scientific age that the left is not for a lot of people. He is that transfer of religiosity from religion to some substitute, like
Right.
archetypes.
No, I mean, I see that. I mean, I think that's true. I think Lindsay is more of a Lindsay's an interesting case. Like we had talked a long time ago, like when we first started talking about doing podcast stuff like that, talking about like looking at some of his stuff and doing like a podcast about like, some of Lindsay's stuff especially
He's so
and
spurgy. He's too spurgy for me. He's
yeah,
too
he's
I
hard to
try to
listen to.
watch
He
his
is, and
stuff, but I have to turn it off after a while because he goes down too many trails and rabbit holes.
and he also gets he really gets in despite the fact that he's a very intelligent person, he gets very caught up on some really really kind of like conspiracy brained
Yeah,
that's
he
even like
does.
conspiracy brained
I
even for
think that's
me
some of the
kind of like.
autism too. He gets fixated on little details that he doesn't necessarily integrate with the rest of the
And he
narrative.
takes them he takes them and at first I thought he was being metaphorical about it or something like that, but then he made very clear that he was being actual literal, that he actually believes that there is a cult of Gnosticism that is like secret cabal of Gnostics controlling things and like that. And I was like, oh my god, dude. you know
But he's smart enough to know that you can't. That's not something you can falsify. There's no reason to hold that belief unless he has some hidden knowledge that we don't. In which case, share it.
I mean, he went into great detail about he was saying that all of the transgenderism stuff is
Right, but
all part of
it's his
like old Gnostic religion.
interpretation from connecting whatever
Yeah,
dots he's reading. He does not have direct
absolutely.
evidence from the Illuminati saying, "Here, James, we are
No,
a
he doesn't.
secret
He does
group.
not.
This proves it. Run with it." He's doing the same
No,
kind of
I'm
speculation
agreeing.
that all these other conspirators are doing.
I'm on your side with that. Absolutely, 100%. I disagree with him like very heartily on that subject. I think that he is like kind of swallowed some Kool-Aid of his own.
Yeah, I've noticed
But
that
you
too.
know,
That's one of the
nonetheless.
things that kept me from like swallowing him 100% as a source or authority. Because like a lot of times,
Yeah.
I give autistic people a lot of credence because I know how concrete and detailed and pattern oriented their minds are. So like they can be more objective or detached or something. So I started out with like noticing that with him. I'm like, okay, here's a brain I could trust because he's going to be tracking the same things that I look for. But
Well,
then
because
he
yeah,
did.
because I
He
mean
took that conspiracy
his
turn. Like he got some misinformation in there
yeah.
somewhere and it started to warp his narrative.
I mean, and it's also it's always a little concerning. You see the same thing with Jordan Peterson too.
Yeah,
Jordan Peterson is he's really on it whenever he's in his field of study, the things that he knows the most about. But then he trails off into politics and stuff like that, and he gets in the weeds, and he gets kind of like it gets kind of spurgy. And James Lindsay did the same thing. He's a mathematician
yeah.
by
I think
by
that's I
trade. I
think
mean,
the
that's what he
politicization of art and literature and everything it damages. I think the more you politicize something, you take it out of being that thing itself, and you start to distort it into something else. And it's that
yeah.
those areas of politicization that we see this stuff from Peterson and Lindsay. And you're right. If they would just stay in their unpoliticized discipline, they're
Mm.
masters of it.
Yeah,
But
they're
it's when
really.
they
I mean,
try
like
to stretch it into politics that that distortion field starts.
Lindsay is brilliant. Was brilliant in like what he did with. I mean, it was kind of political too, but like he was part of he was one of the people that did like those papers
The
that
grievance
created those
hoaxes.
fake papers that
Yeah.
yeah
To
he was one of the
expose
people
the
that
current peer
exposed
review
those
system and
yeah
how faulty it
yeah
was.
and which is why that's what he gave that's what gave him like credibility in the first place. So but that was still kind of math based because he used his skills as a in statistics and mathematics to like create these these fake he was part of creating that was his part of creating those documents and stuff like that, and that's why they seemed part of the reason that they were able to make them seem so credible and everything was because you had a previously peer reviewed and published mathematician and all these other people that were signing off as the authors of those papers, and like that's how they the part of how they got them through the peer review process, which still shouldn't have happened because like people should have immediately they didn't even like people didn't even like look at the statistics. They just saw like the political angle of it, and they were just like, yes, 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 exactly what we want. So it's just it's just so weird.
That's
Um,
another feature of its
um,
similarity to a secular religion because it's no longer connected to reality. It's people just validating each other's
mm,
theology, like it's internally self-validating, like a religion or
right,
theological system would be. And
which is very
it's
similar. Like
turned in toward itself internally instead of toward anything in the external world that the rest of us live in.
and I got in trouble in church from a young age because I questioned things and that I got in trouble even in that church that I was talking
How
about
old
and
were
like
you?
I left the church. I left the church when I was 17, but
How old were you when you got in
um,
trouble? And what did you what was the question? And what was the
I got
how
in
did
trouble
it
all the
what was the
time.
trouble?
I was constantly on the verge of getting like kicked out kicked out of the church because of the fact that I would just question just narrative things. I always had those questions like I've mentioned before about like the problems I had with Christianity's like narrative about like God sending his son to save mankind from sins that he only defines. So I always found
Who
that to
would
be
you
like that
ask
was
this
something
to?
I would question.
Who
I
would
would
you
say it
ask this to?
to pastors and leaders, like it was
And they
genuinely
would
something that
say, "We
bothered me,
got to
and I
get
was
rid of
trying to
this
get the.
Chris guy. He's asking too many questions."
They didn't say it like that, no, but like that was
That's what I
but
want
there
to
was
know.
like the
How what
undertone of
form
like,
did it take? You said you got in trouble. What form did that trouble take? Did they take you out behind
they
the
would
church?
I I not out behind the church, but they would have I had several private discussions with the youth pastor or pastor or church leadership
Like they
about
would
like
call you in. They
because
would
I
go
would
to you and say, "Chris, we'd like to talk to you," and they would call you into their office.
yeah. I was proud church leadership, so I was subject
Oh,
to
so you weren't just the ordinary parishioner.
no, I was a youth leader in the church.
Okay, so was this
I
in your
helped run
role
one.
of youth leader? They had these concerns. You were asking too many questions as a youth leader.
Yeah, and the fact that yeah, like that they said like it made them question how strong my faith was. Like why was I having problems with my faith? And I was like I'm just trying to figure out like there's things about like our
It
theology
sounded
that
like they were
I
just
think that
asking
if we're
questions about you, asking questions.
Maybe
What
so. I
what
mean,
form
it's
did the
not like, but
trouble take?
it happened several
Did they
times.
like censure you in front of the
Okay, when I say in
congregation?
trouble, I mean like I was in trouble in the sense that like yeah, they pulled me to the side and they were like, "Hey, you can't do that. You
I
shouldn't say
thought you
those
said they
things."
asked questions.
Um,
They told you not to ask questions
they told me not to say those things and not ask those questions. Yeah. And
in front of the
I got
kids,
that from yeah, in front of like
or
I mean,
just
even though I was a
ever?
kid too, I was only 17, but yeah, I mean like it was just like I would try to run I used to run a what we had cell groups in our church. We didn't really we had one big Sunday meeting, but in the day in the weeks like we had different small groups that would meet like small Bible study type things. And in my the ones I led, I would bring up questions like that. I wanted to hear people's opinions on it. I wanted to hear what people thought. I want people to think about these things and to
Yeah, I
try
don't
to
think they like
understand their
that. I
faith
don't think they
better.
want that.
They
They're
didn't like
trying
it.
to
They
indoctrinate people into accepting a particular
yeah,
narrative,
exactly.
not have someone along and critique it and show all the reasons to doubt the narrative.
Yeah, to me, like faith without doubt is pointless. If you don't have
Well,
any doubt, then what is the point of having faith, right?
apparently not to
If
them. So
not to them, yeah, no, to them, it was, you know, you have to stick to a certain, like, you know, we don't want to, you know, you don't want to endanger people's, like, you know, burgeoning faith in God by, like, you know, introducing these.
So
And I'm like, but
did
how
you
does that not strengthen
continue
it?
as youth pastor, or did you get kicked out, or how did it end?
I got kicked out.
You did
I
get
got
kicked
kicked
out
out.
of
I
the
got kicked
church,
out.
or just of the
I was kicked
ministry?
out of leadership. Of leadership. I was kicked out of
What
leadership,
did
and
they
then I
say?
left of my own accord about well, and I was told it was because of those things. And then later on, I found out from one of the other church leaders that it actually had nothing to do with that. They didn't actually care that I was questioning things. They were uncomfortable with me because I was much more of a moral purist than a lot of them were, and me they didn't like me being at the church leadership meetings because they couldn't speak as freely as they normally would about the things about all the partying
That
and stuff they
sounds
did,
weird to me
and
because
so
that
like
I don't get
it's
that
really
from you.
weird, right?
I don't see you that way at all.
At the time, whenever I at that time, I was a very much I
You were
didn't call
approved.
myself this, but I was basically what people would call a straight edge kid. I was basically a straight edge kid at the time.
But were
I didn't
you
smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't.
moralistic about it to other people where they would feel that way?
No, I wasn't in a way that was like, and like, and I was told, and I was, and I'm only going by other, I'm going to go by other people's like definitions that they told to me. People told me specifically that they never felt like I was like, you know, getting, because I didn't call people out and I didn't like be like, you're sinning or and stuff like that. I didn't do that kind of stuff, but just the fact that I was there and they knew that I believe those things and I lived like that. The fact they knew that I was those things made them uncomfortable to like, you
Well,
know,
what
to
did they
like really
want to
let
talk
me into
about?
the
Meat
circle
and
because
cigarettes?
um well I don't know exactly, but I mean I get the impression like, you know, there was a lot of like interleadership dating for one thing that was supposed to be not allowed. There was a
So,
lot of
yeah, so
and there was
you were too much of a
there was
prude.
they were
You were
drinking.
harsh in their
Yeah, I was
buzz.
too much of a prude. But at the same time, I wouldn't if I had known, I would not have like I wouldn't have like chastised them or
Well,
anything
that's
like
not
that.
the
I mean,
impression they
but the
got. They
fact is
didn't trust you enough to take the
yeah,
chance.
but because they preached against that kind of stuff all the time, so they were being hypocrites and like, but they were all hypocrites that understood that, you know, that it was that they had an understanding between each other, and they didn't feel like that if they
Yeah.
included me in that I would be understanding of that. And they might be right. I probably wouldn't have been. I said that just a second ago. I said I would have been, but no. I think about it back then. The Chris of those days. Yeah, I probably would have been very.
So then they were right.
Just
You
the
didn't get in
hypocrisy would
trouble.
have annoyed me a
They
lot.
were up to something. They knew you were eventually get onto them, and they got rid of it. That's
Yeah.
not getting in trouble for
Well, but at the
questioning.
same
I
time,
think
but
what
not
that
for
version
what they were
makes way
doing, but
more
for the
sense. What you
hypocrisy.
just told.
Yeah, I mean, it would, but it wouldn't have been for the stuff they were doing. It would have been the hypocrisy, the fact that they were constantly talking about not doing those things and then doing them. That would have bothered me, not the fact that they were doing those things. I wasn't really that much of a prude per se. I just it's just the way I was. I just I was young and I wasn't even old enough to buy cigarettes or alcohol or something like that. I hadn't done those things because, I was raised kind of like to not do them in the first place. But I wasn't even like old enough to like, I had church friends that supposedly didn't drink and didn't do that stuff. So like where was I even going to go and out and do that kind of thing in the first place? Um, I was rather pure in that sense, and I was rather naive about the people around me, and I did not realize. And at the time, whenever taken out of church leadership, they took away my cell group and all that stuff like that. When that happened, like I was very confused for like a long time. It really disillusioned me. Because I had no idea what had happened. They basically just told me that I just wasn't working. It was kind of like one of those things where you get fired and they're like, it's nothing against you. It's just that you're just not working out. You're not really like meshing with us, kind of thing. And it felt very like, it
But
felt
I
very
like it when
disillusioned.
people
It
do
felt
that
like
because
it
I
was
don't like wasting my time, and I don't like being anywhere where I'm not wanted. And so that tells me, oh, this is not the play. You don't have to waste your
that
time
definitely.
trying to
I
force
learned that
yourself
from
into an environment where nobody wants you in the
yeah,
first place.
but I learned that from that experience. That I agree with you, but that's where I learned
Oh,
that mentality. I learned that from that experience. That like I eventually came to the conclusion that, well, if they don't want me there, I don't want to be there anyway. And I stopped going to. I no longer had a small group, and I would still go to the Sunday night type things, but I wasn't part of leadership, so I was literally like I would sit in the back and that I would go like I started going like not even every week. I stopped going as much until I went that one night where the pastor said the thing about like being the voice of God for this church, and if you disagree with me, you can walk out right now. And then I walked out. Um, and
well, that
I
kind of
really
is
thought
what a
other people were going
pastor
to walk
is
out
in
too.
some religions.
Yeah, but that's just not something I believe, and I was always very I felt very strongly about that. I felt very he even had like this kind of crazy look in his eyes. He seemed very megalomaniac. It was very megalomaniacal, and I got a really bad vibe from it, and I walked out. I really thought other people would too, and I was really I walked out. I didn't even look around. I remember walking out, and I was just like I assumed that I was going to see other people coming out behind me, and then no one did, and I was like crap. That there was just me.
You're
And
the
I
only
got
one.
remember I got in my car. Yeah, I was the only one. I got in my car and I drove away. And I went back that one other time to say goodbye to the youth pastor. And it's the only other time I set foot in that place. And that's the last time I really went to church, to be honest. I mean, besides, I've gone with my parents, on holidays and stuff like that since then. But I've never really gone to a church or been a part of a church since then. So yeah, yeah, I agree, Anti Dearest. I don't, especially the way the Catholic Church like has like the whole system of the priest and the Pope type thing that you have to go through them to speak to God is
What
very
that what? Okay,
antithetical
what
to
is
Christ's
that?
teaching.
I don't know what you just said. I grew up Catholic. You don't have to go through the priest to speak
Mm.
to God. I don't know what that's about. We would say our
Well,
prayers every
that is
night.
the
We would
way. I
talk
mean,
to Jesus. We
but
had a personal relationship with Christ
that
and
is the
God and Mary.
but if you want forgiveness for your sins, you have to go to confession.
Or you can pray.
And like literally,
They
but
taught
well,
us
maybe
prayer all
today,
the
maybe like
time. Like you could say rosary. They had novenas, like like little specific prayer recipes you can
yeah.
say. And um, this thing about
I can't
having to
remember the
go to
Latin
the priest.
phrase.
Well, I hardly ever. I was an altar boy, so I was in contact with the priest more than most people. But I
Right.
hardly ever had to go to the priest for anything outside of showing up to do altar service. I did confessional once a week because I thought it was a sacrament. Like I thought I had to, so I would like make up stuff to tell him because I thought you were supposed to like tell him all the stuff you did that week. But even
A
that
lot of
wasn't
churches
that
have
important.
a lot of Catholic churches have the Latin phrase above at least one of their doors that says there is no salvation except through the church. Um, and that's just
But that's
that
not the
it's
same
that
thing
sentiment
as
that
needing going through a priest to talk to God. Like the idea that the church is the vehicle of salvation is what most
But
religions
I mean,
believe about
it's antithetical to
themselves.
to basic Christian beliefs, though. Because
I think you have a
Christianity, or
distorted vision of the
Christ
Catholic
specifically
Church,
taught
like
that like
people have a
if he
distorted
was.
vision of government and the Fed and all that other stuff. It's a system of authority.
Well, I told you before, the Catholic Church both killed and saved my family. So
Right.
like
Right.
I have a weird love hate
Okay.
relationship with them. So
Well,
um,
I'm just telling you, your characterization of it just now sounded very inaccurate to me as somebody
well,
who grew up in the church.
that is probably very fair because I did not grow. I now my grandmother
Like I
was
never
like
had
I
a
said to you,
priest
was
ever
actually in a
tell me
convent.
that you come to me before you talk to, or if you want something from God or talk to God, you come to me first. Never. They always empowered us
I
to
mean that
have a direct line of
that is,
communication with God.
for example, and I know it's just a movie, but you know, remember that movie we watched with Heath Ledger, The Order? Yeah, that's actually what that movie's about. That's actually the subject matter of that movie is the
Do
whole
you
idea that
get
like this
most of
this
your
character
reality
this
from
idea of
movies?
the. No, I was just saying, but the sin eater thing is something I have researched, and it is an actual belief that actually existed in the Catholic Church, at one time. It hasn't in a long time, but it is an actual like there was a belief that there was such a thing as a sin eater, someone who could take away someone's sins on their deathbed, um, outside of the blessings of the church.
Okay, well that's some
That was it.
fringe
That was an
thing because
actual.
that it wasn't anything to do with the Catholicism I grew up with.
It's an old concept that was turned into a movie. I was just saying, like, I mean, it's just like I just use it as an example of just something that I was trying to think of something that I could point to that I knew we had a shared um foundation on, because you've seen that movie as well. So but I mean, yeah, it's not. I don't take everything from movies. No, it's not. That wasn't my point. I was just using that as an example. But there is some pretty well researched Catholic lore in it. Although it's a weird, over the top movie with like the
Well,
black
it's just
dark
a
cloak
movie. I was
thing and
more
like the hanging
concerned about the
people. Yeah.
claim that the Catholic we were like mind enslaved by the Pope and had to go through him for everything. So that's all I
I don't think
was
I don't
want
I
to
don't think they're
address.
mind enslaved by the Pope. I don't believe that.
You
I
said
just
you
think, but
people had to
that
go
is
through
part
the
of
Pope
Catholic
to
thought.
talk to God. Like you, if you're Catholic, you have to go through the Pope to talk
But
to
that
God.
that
That's
is
just
that
not
is
true.
the but if that is if you look at the
I grew up. I don't
actually
have to
the
look
actual
at
doctrine.
anything. I was part of the Catholic Church. I was on the
Okay, I was
inside. I
talking
was
about
an
the
altar
doctrine.
boy.
I'm talking about the written doctrine of the Catholic Church.
Well, show it to
Says that
me.
all of
Link
the
it.
says that
Show it to me. I'll read it and see
okay,
what you're talking about.
okay.
Because usually when I look at these and
And I'm
start
not
picking
saying like
apart, they
there
turn
are
out
a
to
lot
be
of
not be
things.
what they look like on the surface.
There are a lot of things in the Catholic Church that are not practiced today as the way they were when they were set up, but the
Okay, then
initial
if they're not practiced
structure
today like
of
it
the
was set
church.
up, then saying that Catholics have to go to the Pope is not inaccurate. If they're not even doing it anymore, then why even describe Catholics that way if it's archaic and obsolete?
Let me see what I can how I can. I'm trying to figure out a phrase this to pull this up. Um, is there
You
because I
can't
want to
just
say like they
watch the
call him. I
stream
call
and
the.
tell.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
Something say something in comments. I can't see the comments
yeah,
at the moment.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Whatever you were saying.
No, I was saying like I want to say that like they use a term like the Pope is their emissary to God or something like that. But I'm trying to remember the actual
Yeah, but
phraseology of it.
he's the representative on earth of God. But that doesn't mean you have to go through him for everything to talk to God. Like
Well, I mean, if someone is
you're
the
reading you're
emissary,
taking
an
you're
emissary is
taking
literally the person.
that you're adding a lot of meaning into that that's not necessarily in the concept of being the emissary.
Well, I mean, with the very definition of the term emissary is someone who speaks on behalf
Okay,
of
well, believe what you want. I'm
other
telling you
people.
that is not how Catholics take it, and that's not if you want to turn that into the Pope being the person you have to go, then that's you putting a twist on the concept of emissary as Catholics use it, as even as it's used linguistically. It's like
Hold on,
it
I'm
seems
I
like
am.
motivate like you want to believe that about the Pope, and you're trying to fit reality to that belief instead of having the belief emerge from following what Catholics actually say and do. And I think that's what I'm reacting to because it seems like some
Okay. And I agree. I
Like
agree.
kind of
So
like a little
I
game
know
going on.
I've met many nuns. I've met nuns. I've plenty many of nuns and plenty of Catholic people in my lifetime that were genuine believers that really did that really did believe in their commitment to purity and faith and stuff like that. That really good people that I think that really radiated a light that I can't even put my finger on. So I don't think that all Catholics are evil or something like that. I
I didn't
mean,
say.
I
I
just
don't think you think
there's
that.
some of their doctrine. I just think some of their doctrine is rather is contradictory to what the Bible itself says. But it's really, if you don't believe in the Bible, it doesn't what does it matter?
But you could probably do that with any religion, and I still don't know what the particular doctrine is that says we have to go through the Pope to talk to God.
Yeah,
Like I don't know
they
that as Catholic
here's
doctrine.
here here's from Catholic365.com. I don't know how good of a source this is, but it looks like a very
You know how
Catholic
many
positive
Catholics there are
website.
on Earth? Like the Pope would never. One single human couldn't process all of the people if they had to go. If every Catholic had to go through him to talk to God.
Yeah, no, I mean but that's the reason why there's the all of the priest and and the succession of that's the reason why there's the stair step um militaristic kind of command structure in the church. It's kind of like the
It's
Pope is the
not. It's a
president, right?
hierarchy, just like any workplace with
Yeah,
the
it's
supervisor
hierarchy. Yeah,
and middle managers. It's not a
yeah, sure.
militaristic. You seem to have a strong bias against Catholicism, and you're doing with
I do have a
Catholicism
strong
what
bias.
Lib does with capitalism. There's no way to talk rationally and objectively about it because
I do have a
everything
strong
gets
argument against
distorted into this
Catholicism, but
demonic boogeyman.
I don't think it's demonic. I didn't say it was demonic.
Well,
I
it's
just
it's
I think
very
I
it's
disagree.
grossly inaccurate, and you seem very attached to this idea that the Pope,
I
because
mean,
you're
even according
searching
to
for reasons to keep hanging on to it with little
I mean,
scraps
I
of
didn't
doctrine.
understand Catholicism until I researched it.
I don't think you understand it now.
You're maybe
If
not.
that's what you
You know,
think about it, I don't think you understand it now.
I mean, it does say here that Catholics do literally believe that he is the vicar of Christ or the representative of Christ.
Okay, show me where the
And
Catholics
Christ is
have
the
to
head of the
go
church.
through the Pope to talk to God. That's you keep shifting what I'm actually addressing. It's not that he's the representative of God. I acknowledge that. That's we can move on from that. It's that in his role of representative, Catholics have to go through him to have a contact with God or to have a relationship with God. Plenty of religions see their ministers and their pastors as representatives for God. That's not even specifically a Catholic thing. And the Pope doesn't even talk to God in the Catholic Church. There's this belief that the Pope directly talks to God, and Catholics don't even teach that. So that's all. That's all I want to correct. But do you want to go watch Murder?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess we're not getting any viewers much today. It's a slow. It's a Monday. It's a slow day, I guess.
I have to.
We had a good conversation though.
Oh,
I was
did
just hmm?
hang on? I got. He said, "Rip Rodney Dangerfield," and I thought he was already dead. Yeah, he is. Okay, never mind. I'm like, did
Yeah,
he
he
die a
died a
long
while
time
back.
ago?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, Rodney Dangerfield, but yeah, R.I.P. though. That dude was cool.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy Rodney Dangerfield as a
What was
comedian.
that movie he did?
Some of his
Wally Sparks. That's still one of my favorite comedies. That was hilarious.
yeah, that's a good one. Or his original no, that was Walter Matthau. I get him and Walter Matthau confused sometimes. And there's some later days they had very similar kind of things. But I was thinking he did the Bad News Bears, but no, he did Ladybugs. Ladybugs.
Yeah, Ladybugs with Jack
Um,
Hay.
yeah, yeah. And that movie, I remember watching that. It used to come on TBS all the time on Saturday afternoons, and I've seen it probably I've seen it probably it's one of those movies I've seen more times than I've seen a lot of my favorite movies because it would just be on television at a time whenever I didn't have access to we didn't have all this digital streaming stuff and everything. So you were stuck with whatever was on, right? And so and that was a movie that TBS loved to play on Saturday afternoons, like after like cartoons and stuff are over, and I've seen it like a bunch of times. That like I remember Summer School with Mark Harmon. You remember that movie?
Kind of, sort of.
I remember seeing Summer School with Mark Harmon several times. I remember seeing Ladybugs a bunch of times. I remember seeing like Bad News Bears, a bunch of movies like that. Like always like had some like gruff like gruff kind of like asshole character like learning lessons or whatever and big and learning to like to love his like level group of misfits kind of thing. There was a bunch of those movies back then. Um, you need to get a mini vanilla cupcake. It'll make you happy. Okay. I think
Okay,
we'll
I
come to
think
an
we'll
agreement
end on
soon.
that. What a lovely note to end on. I have to run to the store anyway. I don't eat cupcakes, but I'll pick up something to make me happy, and then we can come back and watch Murder. And then what was that other thing we said we need to
I
watch?
downloaded. I tried. Oh, the whole wide world. I think I got
Oh yeah,
into
I'd like to
to
see
see if
that
it's
too.
still
But
there.
there was another. We talked about it today. What in addition to Murder, it was fuck. Oh well, I
Oh
don't remember.
shit! You're right. There was something. Fuck. Oh man, what was that? That's gonna drive me
Well,
crazy now.
everyone have cupcake unless you're diabetic or it's dangerous for you. Then please don't eat a cupcake. But everybody do something fun for yourself. Treat yourself.
Yeah,
If it's
it's
not
Monday.
a
You gotta.
cupcake, have it be something that you enjoy that gives you pleasure. It's always nice. I think it's good self
You know,
care and mental health practice to just treat yourself whenever you can throughout the week. Um, and we'll be here. Who knows? We've been in the evening lately, so that could happen tonight as well. But we're
yeah,
gonna
our
go
evening streams
watch
have been a
this.
lot
What's the
longer.
show called? Murder at the End of the Earth.
Murder at the End of the World. We'll be on Discord. If any of you guys are not on the Discord and you'd like to join us, let us know,
Yeah.
and we will send you the Discord invite, and you were welcome to jump on and watch it. It should. I tested out my streaming capabilities from this desktop, and it was working beautifully. So, as far as I can tell, but we'll see once other people jump on. I've only tested it a little bit, so. Um, but I think it's going to work really well. So I think it's going to. I had a good quality rip of it and everything, and it should be good. So
Okay.
if you guys want to come and it's not a movie, Cynthia. It's a TV
It's a
series.
series. It's a new series, and it's like it's these people living in the Arctic, and there's like it's like a murder mystery. There's like 8 people, and they one of them gets murdered, and they have to figure out who did it before the killer strikes again, etc. It's like so. It sounds cool.
Yeah, yeah. We've got that, and then what else did I snatched a couple other things. Let me see what I got here. I got the whole wide world thing. It still hasn't downloaded yet. I need to move up the queue. It was too low in the queue. I got the OA. I also downloaded some other movies that popped up the tracker that I thought looked interesting anyway. Um, there was another show that same actress was in called Babylon from 2014. That was a British
Oh, I
BBC
tried.
show.
Oh, Babylon 2014.
Um, yeah,
Well, anyway, we
not
can
the one from her recently.
let's go over this in the Discord because I have to get to the
And there's
store.
that Fallout show that everyone is saying is great. I don't know if it's gonna be good or not, but I downloaded it.
Fallout.
There's a show I think there's one I think you'll like. That's called Late Night with the Devil. It's a new horror, not a horror movie. It's supposed to be a psychological like thing where like it's like this late night talk show and they bring on like some girl that's possessed and they're going to try to exorcise her on national television, and I guess things get really weird and fucked up. So it looks really good. um the trailer of it it makes it look really, it has the look of like an 80s TV show. It really looks like it was like shot back then and like that time, and so it's got a really cool look to it. So I've got that. It's a bummer the stream is ending out. Jensen's here. Yeah, just come out on Discord, guys. Like it's we can just keep the party going there. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, and like I said, I might be back tonight, or we'll definitely be here tomorrow.
Yeah,
Or well,
our
again.
late night streams have been going for like a long time. Like we have not we get a lot more traffic for some reason late night streams lately. It like we started doing the 2 p.m. streams originally because it seemed like that was when we got the most traction, but now here lately like the late
Well,
night
that
streams
was when you said
have
you
been
could be
getting.
available most. That was the time slot that you said worked best because we
Well,
tried,
I
and
mean,
then I had some days that I wasn't free in the evenings, but
yeah.
I'm more free in evenings now, so we could start trying to incorporate. some regular evening
We
stream.
can start. We can start like we can move certain. We can always like do the 2 p.m. like stream to see if anything pops off, and if it doesn't, then you don't have hotspot until the first of the month. Um, what do you mean? What app don't you have? Discord? Do you not? You have internet. Discord doesn't require anything special for internet access. It doesn't. You you need me to send you a link or something like that, I can walk you through the Discord. Discord is super easy to install and it's super easy to use, as long as you have the invite thing. So it's really not hard. It can be a little complicated when it comes to notification stuff. You have to learn how to turn the right notifications off and stuff like that. Otherwise, it'll annoy the crap out of you. But it's still fairly easy. Um, yeah, but just let us know. Like, I mean, my as always, my email is satiriconoclast@gmail.com or a plague of arrows@gmail.com. I have both those. Bernard Latskin as well as another email address I've used
Okay,
in
don't
general.
overload them.
So if you, I'm just saying, but you can email me at any
All
number
right.
of like my screen names at Gmail, and I will respond to you, guaranteed. So
But
you
oh
don't have
yeah,
any,
that's another
you don't have
reason.
internet.
There are a lot more people streaming at night, Colt. So this time slot, we kind of get to ourselves a lot of times. Like last night, we were
Well,
competing with
Andy
Flo.
Dearest,
Cynthia was over there. All the gang were hanging out at
yeah,
Flo's,
what were you doing over there on the flow
missing the
state,
good time
Cynthia?
we were
What's up with
having over
that, huh?
here.
What's up
No,
with that,
I'm just kidding. Y'all
Cynthia?
look like y'all were having fun.
No, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not. I don't care. Um, no, you don't have internet. You said Andy Dearest. Okay. Well, how are you then? How are you chatting?
She's
You're
using her
using your phone.
phone.
You're using your internet on your phone. So you're using your data connection on your phone, right? Am I wrong about that? Yeah, Uncle Vi said Discord pulls all bandwidth possible. I don't have that problem with Discord on my phone. I find Discord to be very lightweight on my phone. It's never slowed my phone down. I even like I'm very like tech centric about stuff like that. Like I always like if my phone starts going slow, I'll start like uninstalling things and seeing like what's causing issues. And I've never actually gotten much issue with Discord. But if you have that issue, then I guess I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. You're on the YouTube app, right? Okay. But if you're on the YouTube app, you're using the internet. So you're on the YouTube app on your
She's using
phone.
her
You're using like
phone.
probably a 5G connection. Yeah. So yeah, you can download Discord on your phone, and it'll work the same way the YouTube app does. If you can get to the App Store either on iPhone or on Android, Discord is a free download, and it is fairly easy to sign up for. The sign up process is very quick.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, we need to get some cake up in here. If that's what draws the. I don't know if I want. She might be doing me a favor, Fatty, doing that over there. We do
wait a
chesties
second.
here,
Like
so that's
porcelain.
about as much as we can accommodate currently. Maybe every now and then
I mean,
Hank, I think, is willing to
like, yeah, you won't go
throw in a
churros.
little of his drip.
Oh, your phone is ancient. Okay, I see. I see. I'm surprised your YouTube app works then, because like my YouTube is one of the most is one of the most resource intensive. If you're using it, it's one of the most resource intensive apps you can use. So I'm
Yeah, and
surprised that
Auntie, for
you're
somebody on a
able to do
phone,
that.
you're like one of the most active people here. So it's you are
Yeah.
maximizing that connection for
Well,
sure.
Auntie, Auntie, can would you benefit from a free Chromebook laptop that I convert to Linux and and set up for streaming and stuff like that? Would that be something that would help you? I do have two of them right now available and ready to go. And
If
if
she
you
has
are
the internet connection for it.
right, I guess but you could usually you said you don't have hotspot access to like later this month, so you can't connect your laptop to it. So that makes sense. I understand what you mean by the hotspot access then. Okay, I got you. And I actually have a couple of phones too. I'd be more than happy to if you can pay for the shipping. I am broke right now, so I don't have any money to ship things. But if you can pay for the shipping, I have a couple of phones that I am not using, and that will totally run Discord. So if you need like a phone that's a little newer or something like that, it's literally it's just it's e-waste in my house. It's not being used for anything. So let me know. You can always email me, and like we can talk about there or whatever. But I do. I do. The community has been so kind in trying to help out with my financial issues. The only thing I could do to give back is to is through like this like weird tech stuff I have laying around all over my house. So that I used to do computer repair and everything like that. So
Take my junk.
that's what I have to try to. I mean, it sounds like junk, but it's not because I fixed it up and made it work. So it's actually, I mean, it's a useful. The laptop works really well. So anyway, but you guys have
Yeah.
a great
Anyway,
night.
I gotta wrap this up. My brain is.
We're gonna watch the show called watch the show called The Murder at the End of the World. But whenever Jeff gets there, so but I'm gonna go ahead and log myself into the video channel, so I'll be there if anybody wants to jump in early. I will be there. They're waiting. So you guys have a great rest of your Monday. We all know Mondays are not Mondays. It's not Monday Fun Day. I don't know what could Monday be. Monday could be Monday Mundane Day. I don't know. I don't have any good puns for that. So I don't have any good dad jokes. So yeah, no. I mean, like
Yeah.
I know you're broke too. I understand, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, I don't think it would cost much to ship the phone. I just like but like the laptop would cost a little bit more. So
Yeah. Take
just
care,
give me an
everyone.
email. Have a good one. Bye.
Okay. We'll be in Discord. Maybe here tonight. Definitely here tomorrow. So take care. Have a good beginning of your week. See you later.